Hey guys, it's Vandiezo back with Crap at Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and sorry. This time we are covering DZ set 10 Artisaria. So Artisaria got one new card of support that I actually run in this deck, but at the same time, I didn't do a deck profile when we got Lumiol, so this deck does have Lumiol in it. And more importantly, in the same set, we have a new token generating deck in the form of Juicy Fruity with plant tokens. And while that deck is mid as hell, they do actually have one card that is actually pretty solid that really does help out Artisaria, since there's a cost that nothing else in Artisaria's deck actually uses. So let's start, shall we, and see what we have today. First up, we have our energy generator. It is our ride deck crest. You remember ride deck is in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you ride, put this card to your crest zone. If you win second, you get to energy charge 3. Continues to make up to 10 energy, auto begin your right face, energy charge 3. Then after once per turn, energy plus 7, draw a card. Arm pretty solid, you get a free 3 energy every turn. If you win second, you get an extra 3 on top of that. And once you have 7 energy, you get to blast 7 of it to draw a card. You will never use that 7 skill at all, because the main grade 3 does take 2 energy. And I mean, yeah, there will always be 1 extra energy you will use. You know, maybe there will be games where you do end up using that 7 energy. But our really good support card in Lumiol also takes up energy 2 to make Shadow Army tokens. So more likely than not, you'll never use the energy blast 7 skill. But if you end up having to use it, it is a solid option to be there. And it's a good thing that the deck does only have cards that cost 2 energy. That way you're not going to be losing out on too much energy per turn. Moving on to our grade 0, we have Heap Up Octaver Prota. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Auto roll upon for second draw card. Standard starter and up on free draw if you go second. This starter is required for the deck, as the grade 1 does require and the grade 2 does require the grade 1. Therefore, you do have to run Prota as a starter, and the line is really consistent when it comes to searching out the sound system. So yeah, 1 of Prota. Moving on to our triggers, we have our Overtrigger, Mysterious Twins, Romia, and Rumia. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, you remember Overtrigger in your deck, remove it as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one, you get plus 1 million for the turn. And if you vote it during your draft check, activate the addition effect would you, the player, get during this fight. You get during your turn, all your rear guards get 10,000 power. All around pretty solid, because this deck can consistently make rear guards of 15k bases. So being able to make those 25k bases once you draft check is great, because that means you have 50k columns coming out of your opponent's Vanguard, plus your Vanguard column, who's already like 28k, possibly 38k now, thanks to this Overtrigger. Very solid card to have in the deck for just overall offensive pressure. If you want to have more multi-attack, you could run Volatile, or if you want extra crit pressure, you could run Asphoria. But I think Romeo Rumia is definitely your way to go just for overall numbers. And then we have our normal triggers, 3 front triggers and Snow Skip Palavi. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 4k base, continues guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, add 5,000 to her shield. So she's a 20k shield, she's a front trigger, so she helps increase your numbers in the front row even more. And again, we like having that with our 15k grade 1s. And she's a 20k shield, which helps defensively with a deck that doesn't really commit too much from hand. So solid 3 of. Then we have a total of 8 crit, 4 of them being Cheerful Sunshine Wallace. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k base. Make this any crit you want, just to make it Wallace, because when I built this deck, I stole the deck design from Chris Rain, and this, because this is where Chris Rain, I just stole it from there. And then we have 4 more in Fluffy Lady Godleaf. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k base. Again, another vanilla crit. You can make any vanilla crit you want. 8 crit for offensive pressure. You don't really need Edwidge too much in this deck, because while there is a Soul Blaster, it's literally only 1 Soul Blaster. So yeah, you don't really need to worry about Soul in this deck. And then we have 4 heal and Talkative Hour Tammuz. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Make any vanilla you want. I chose to make a Tammuz because I stole again from Chris Rain, and because Wallace was in that deck, I obviously stole Tammuz with it. Moving on to our grade 1s, 3 of this can be whatever you want. I chose to make it this because why not? Spagato Step Leon, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, continues rear guard or guard circle. If your order zone has a sound system, it gets 5,000 power, 5k shield, active burst turns, not even requiring you to be on an Artisaria. So if Bushy ever made a different sound system grade 3 that wasn't Artisaria, well, you can still use Leon in that deck. But being a 10k shield and 13k base, once you actually hit grade 3, is pretty solid. Again, most of the time you're going to have your Shadow Army tokens taking up the board, but it's a good card to have in hand and basically have defensively with that 10k shield. But if you do play it in the early game to aggro rush your opponent, well, until you call over it with Shadow Army tokens, at least she's a 13k grade 1, so she's a better grade 1 than most things. So 3 of Leone. And then we have 4 copies of Trailing Notes for Verberia. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Continues rear guard during your turn. If your order's on a south system, she gets a 5,000 power, so she's also a 13k booster, but she's also a 13k swinger as well, just like Leone is once you do get a sound system. And then auto rear guard, that she boosts it. If your order zone has a sound system in it, put her to soul to choose on rear guards and bounce it back to your hand. So it's a way to recycle rear guards and add stuff back to your hand. I don't know why I thought she countercharged my entire time. You can make this Rivera. I genuinely did think she countercharged. I don't know why I keep thinking she does, which makes sense actually in hindsight that I didn't realize that, because I haven't drawn her since I remade the deck. But you can make this Rivera to, you know, have rear guard recursion, because some of Artisaria's skills do actually require calling Shadow Army tokens over stuff, and then them either being bounced to hand or retired by that card effect. Or there are cards you want to be able to recycle back to your hand, a Ham Lumiol for skills. However, if you do want to get more CB back, there is a new card that came out with the Juicy Fruity line, who at the end of the battle she boosted token, can send herself to soul to countercharge 1. So you can make this either a Verbia or that grade 1. In hindsight, realizing that this card doesn't countercharge, I would actually go with that grade 1 personally, so I have more freedom with my CB, but that's not to say the deck has a CB problem. It doesn't. It's just that that's my freedom aspect with it. But for Rivera, good grade 1 to have regardless for just getting you soul and bounce back in rear guards, and she's a 13k compared to that grade 1, which isn't a 13k, so as you will. Moving on with 4 PGs and best served top Warmia, grade 1 boost, 0 soul, 6k base, continuous sentinel for 4 sentinels in deck, and always put on guard circle, choose whatever units, it cannot be hit in battle for your consumer cards, and discard from hand and discard it. Standard PG, nothing to specify the best enemies. If this is one of the cards that your hand plus on guard circle, you don't have to discard great, because that means you be super aggressive in the early game. As aggressive as you can be is rush with Rivera, and then rush with all of your grade 2s, and then your opponent does eventually counterattack you, throw it down, Warmia will be good to go. But again, this deck doesn't really commit too many hand cards to rear guard circle, so pretty much as you make Shadow Army tokens, your opponent slowly whittles you down, just Warmia them and make sure you're safe. So very solid 4 PG to have. You can make it pretty much any Lyrical Monasterio PG because they all have the same skills Warmia. I still have to make it Warmia though because she came out close to time of Artisaria's release, and she's one of my favorite ones, having that really cool Christmas winter vibes. Next up, we have our last grade 1 in the deck. One of the right deck, none of the main deck of Dynamic Exciter Asteria. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto when replaced by writing from Heap Up Octavor Prota. Reveal a grade 3 card with Artisaria in the card name from the right deck. Search deck for 1 South Center card, reveal pertaining to your deck. I love how it's just a free South Center by simply writing from the grade 1. And because it's an active skill, so it activates the second it's placed, that means you can increase your chance of pulling triggers by 1 card, because again, she's pulling out 1 card that's not a trigger from your deck the second she's placed. So it's all grade 1 to have in the deck as a 1-up in the right deck. None of the main deck, she has no real cost to her skill, and again, she doesn't increase your trigger chance by 1, so solid card to have. On to our grade 2s, 3 copies of Devilish Flanger Lufer, grade 2 intercept, 5k shield, 10k base, auto and place on rear guard circle or put on guard circle. If your order's on the South System card in it, this unit gets 5,000 power, 5k shield to end of turn. If I remember correctly, someone correct me if I'm wrong, because Bushy is really weird with their extra wording. Put on guard circle does count as intercepting as well. Again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that means intercepting will make her a 10k shield. Also being able to be a 15k base when placed on rear guard circle is solid as well, again, only requiring a South System order. Following that, auto when return to rear guard circle from hand during your turn, so is benefit to running Rivera, or it's retired from rear guard circle during your turn. Again, you just call over her with the Shadow Army, or you just straight up hard call over her with a trigger if you really want that draw. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Artisaria, counterboss 1 draw card. The deck has 3 different cards that cost CB, of which realistically you're only ever using Artisaria and maybe this one. You can use Lufer if you want for the extra draw, considering this one also costs 2 soul and nothing else in the deck eats soul, so you can feel free to have at it with that one. But being able to increase your hand when it's either called over or bounce back to hand is pretty solid once you do hit that grade 3 or greater Artisaria. And again, it's a 15k pressure once you have a Sound System order, or it's a 10k shield, which again helps the deck defensively. I do love how this deck has like a good balance between offense and defense. And it's not like, I just recorded the Granfia deck too, so I'm gonna talk a little bit of shit about this. It's not like Granfia, where it quote-unquote excels in power, but only specifically in 2 attacks, and then it fails in defense. This deck actually has really consistent defense, but it also actually does really good in power. Like, it doesn't overextend in power like some decks would, like Dimension Police, for example, back in V, but it still gives pretty good numbers all around since you're constantly making Shadow Army tokens. It still gives good defense power as well, considering the fact that we have several cards that gain shield value, but also you rarely call stuff from hand to rear guard circle, so take that as you will. So 3 of Lufer. Then we have 3 copies of Touching Essence Dainty, grade 2 intercept, 5k shield, 10k base, auto placed on rear guard circle that has a token on it, either CB1 or Soul Blast 2 to draw a card, and if your Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, because it's 5,000 power for the turn. So it doesn't require the opponent to be at a specific grade, she'll just get extra power regardless as long as your Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, but either way she'll get a draw as long as you call on top of a Shadow Army token, which is good, because again, you can either spend 2 soul, which nothing else in the deck costs soul, so there you go, or you can spend a CB, which again, if you want to be more free with your CB, replace Rivera with the 1 counter charge in grade 1 that I mentioned earlier, came on the same set of Dainty. And then auto when a token unit is placed on top of her by your Vanguard's ability, specifically put her back into your hand. Pretty solid, because that means you can again be consistent with your multi-attacking, and then when your Artisaria calls over a token over Dainty, Dainty can just free bounce herself back to hand, and that way you can call Dainty next turn to replace that token, and you're still gonna have a 15k base unit. All around, very solid with Dainty. She's pretty much the same numbers as Shadow Army tokens. She gets you extra hand cards as well for cheap alternate costs, and she can recycle herself once the token is placed on top of her as well, making her a solid 3 of in the deck for support. Then we have 4 copies of a card we wouldn't mind bouncing back to the hand in V Rivera's ability, and that is Angelic Echo Lumiel. Grade 2 intercept, 5k shield, 10k base, auto and place on rear guard circle by any means, from anywhere. Choose up to 1 grade 3 card with Artisaria's card name from your hand, reveal it, or if you have revealed a card or your Vanguard's already a grade 3 or greater Artisaria in the card name, Energy Blast 2, call a Shadow Army token to rear guard circle and that you cannot attack for the turn. Downsides to this, and I did misplay with this once because I didn't realize that's how it's worded. Unlike every other card that has that similar ability, it does not reveal from Ride deck, it reveals from hand. So if you don't have an Artisaria in hand, you can't use that skill. However, automatically, if you have an Artisaria in your hand or on Vanguard circle, this is a Energy Blast 2, get a free Shadow Army. Who cares if it can't attack? It's a 15k booster, yeet it behind the Vanguard, pressure your opponent. Then auto will put on guard circle, again I'm pretty sure intercepting counts towards that. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard with Artisaria Artisaria in the card name. Retire one or more up to 2 Shadow Army token rear guards, and this you get 10,000 shield for each one retired for until the end of the battle. Basically, if you Merc 1, she's a 15k. If you Merc 2, she's a 25k. And again, you can remake those tokens because you probably have another Lumio in hand, and even if you don't, well, Artisaria is going to get you 2 next turn guaranteed. Very solid grade 2 to have overall. Has extra guard power. Has the ability to make tokens for the same cost Artisaria pretty much has to make tokens as well. Not to mention the fact that she's just overall good for early game pressure, but just defensive consistency too. Like, this is a great grade 2. Like, you're crazy not to run this as at least a 3 if not a 4 of an Artisaria just because of how good it is. Then we have 4 of Spreading Chorus Lyrical. Grade 2 instant 5k shield, 10k base. Auto and place on rear guard circle. Check the top 7, choose to 1 South Sister card and reveal it, and then discard and shuffle your deck. So pretty much Grunder from Orphis, which makes sense that they share the same tokens because some of Artisaria's cards are kind of basically reskins of Orphis cards, hence the discard skill, which is pretty much similar to Grunder. And then auto when retire from rear guard circle. If you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard Artisaria in the card, called to 1 shot armor token to back or rear guard circle. Unlike Orphis, who could have rear guard, specifically Novaria, who was a grade 3, who could call a shot army token anywhere it was called on top of. Unfortunately, this deck doesn't have that. It has to be specifically called into back row. Still, though, it's free, and what matters more is that this ability is coming from a grade 2. So where Novaria would cost you guard power, and it was a handful of reasons why I lost some games, Arisa is not going to cost you those games because she actually has extra shield to her. On top of that, unlike Orphis, who doesn't have any main deck cards, actually no, Orphis has a handful of main deck cards that can generate rear guards, but they cost CB to do so. This deck costs energy to do so. And more importantly, those same cards that could do it that were rear guards, not specifically the one really good order that could do it, they required you to be an Abyssal Dark Knight. This card you can proc off on turn 2. 4 of this. Very solid grade 2. Get you orders in the drop zone, which you can then pull off Artisaria's ability, so it deck thins, and it does it for free. It does it regardless of what grade either player's at. But more importantly, also for free, once you hit grade 3 or greater, regardless of what grade your opponent's Vanguard's at, you get a free token on top of her. More importantly, she can be retired by any means. So you can just straight up, again, like how I said with Lufer, you can just call a crit on top of Eris, and then once you're at grade 3, she'll get you a token to back row, which can also attack, unlike Lumio, who prevents her from attacking. Solid 4 of. Then we have our last grade 2 in the deck, one of in the right deck, none in the main deck of Witching Verbato Lifil. Grade 2 instant 5k shield, 10k base, auto replaced by writing from Dynamic, etc. Estera. Reveal grade 3 card Artisaria in the card name from the ride deck. Reveal search deck for 1 sound system card, reveal pertain shuffle your deck. Okay, typically I'm not a fan of ride decks that have the exact same skill copy and paste over each other because that is literally the exact same thing as Estera. The only difference being it says Estera in the card text instead of the grade 0's name. But I mean, cool. Being able to pull an order from deck, again, just by being placed is great because again, that deck thins you for triggers more often, but it also sets you up for ride deck discard fodder because the whole point of the deck is you can play orders from drop zone. So that way, you know, the grade 1 and the grade 2 are guaranteeing that your rides from grade 1 to grade 2 and then from grade 2 to grade 3 are going to be free because you can just the order which you can then play from drop zone via Artisaria. So very solid grade 2 to have in the deck. Deck thins for you, basically gets you discard fodder, gets you increased trigger chances on the second place, so one of in the red deck. And then on to our grade 3s. 3 of Shout and Shadow, our first sound system card. Grade 3 set order continuous, it cannot be played and it cannot be put into your order zone other than by the ability of Artisaria in the card because otherwise the deck would be really broken. And then auto was put into the order zone, draw a card, call to 1 Shadow Army token to rear guard circle. Free draw and get you a Shadow Army to rear guard circle. It allows you to get a little bit additional extra pressure on your opponent aggressively, but also allows you to get defensive as well. Not a bad card to have, especially if you do play it from hand via Artisaria's ability, because Artisaria's on place from hand ability allows you to draw a card to replace the card you place from hand, meaning if you use Shout and Shadow, you draw a total of 2 cards and you get a Shadow Army token. Not a bad grade 3 card to have in the deck. In this deck, you don't need the Shadow systems at more than 3 copies in my opinion. If honestly you wanted to, you could risk having them at 2-2, but I like having them at 3 because there'll be some games where you don't need Mega Romania and you'll want to use Shout and Shadow as much as possible, and vice versa, where you want to use Mega Romania more than you want to use Shout and Shadow, especially because again we have 2 token generators over here. But being able to tech them down, not from 4, allows you to have a little bit more space in the deck for other cards, so 3 of Shout and Shadow for rear guard creation and hand card recursion. As for 3 copies of Mega Romania, grade 3 set order continuous, it cannot be played, it cannot be put into your order zone by the ability with Artisaria in the card name, and auto put into your order zone if your opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greater, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and lock it. Yes, because it has the reverse R, meaning it automatically was going to lock things. Pretty solid all around. It gets rid of one of your opponent's interceptors / attackers, making it a lot harder for them to defend and a lot harder for them to attack on the next turn, meaning you can just PG a little bit more recklessly. But it puts additional pressure on your opponent as well because again, you're creating 15k rear guards out the wazoo consistently with this deck to the point where you can kind of just pressure them out, and who knows, that 5k shield might actually make the difference, especially if you're actively rushing your opponent. Very solid card to have. The only downside is it requires the opponent to be at grade 3, but if it didn't, honestly, Artisaria would be a very dangerous control deck, and to be fair, it is already kind of like that. But I prefer to use Artisaria in a more aggressive way, right? spam Shout and Shadow consistently, but sometimes I do have to use Mega Remains to make sure I can kill my opponent. Moving on to our last card on the deck, 3 in the main deck, 1 in the right deck of one of my favorite grade 3s, just say the name of fully, Polyphonic Overdrive Artisaria. Grade 3 does not present 13k base. Artisaria has 3 different skills. It changes Vanguard during turn. If your order zone has 2 or more sound systems in it, she gets +1 critical. So pretty solid ability just to have, you know, double crit base once you do end up hitting 2 sound system cards. Unfortunately, because they cannot be played normally, that means you'll only be able to pull that ability off on your second grade 3 turn. But God forbid Bushy ever gives you a card that can somehow place them into order zone that would still be counted as Artisaria. Well, there you go. Then act Vanguard once per turn, energy blast 2, choose a sound system from your hand or drop them, put to order zone. You put it from hand, draw a card. So again, most of the time you're just going to be discarding them for ride deck because the ride line allows that. But being able to play them from hand and then still get a draw to replace them install, and again, if you play it off Shadow for Shadow, you get a second draw as well and a token. And not to mention the fact that its third ability is Auto Vanguard once per turn. When it attacks anything, CB1, call up to 1 Shadow token to rearguard circle for each sound system in your order zone, and your front row gets 5,000 power until end of turn for every 2 sound systems in your order zone. Very solid that skill only costs a CB. All around, Artisaria is very cost efficient because technically her first skill costs nothing outside of having 2 sound system cards. Her second skill only costs 2 EB, which you get 3 EB every turn, so you're always going to have an extra EB on top of that. If you want to spend that extra EB, well, you know, you got Lumiel over there. And not to mention the fact that that simple CB allows you to get 4 to 5 attacks every single turn, along with extra pressure on your opponent, even if it's only 5k, because again, you're making 15k rearguard through Shadow Omni tokens with our grade 1s with boost 0 so but 15k bases. All around, it's amazing grade 3. It gets crit pressure from turn 4 and onwards, constant pressure to play either Mega Romania, which can unlock rearguards, or Shout and Shadow, which can make you more rearguards and basically aggro your opponent down in a deck that can already make rearguards consistently, and not to mention the fact that she can multi-attack for a very simple CB cost and get more numbers to your front row. And if you are ever one of those few games where you are going to like turn 6, because one game I did actually go to turn 6, and suddenly you're getting 10k to front row, add a Persona on top of that, that's plus 20k to front row with Shadow Armor tokens. Long story short, that was a game where both sides stacked heals out the wazoo, and not to mention the fact that both sides were playing very defensively, so yeah, I kind of had to get to turn 6, and that's just a fun turn where I got a lot of numbers out of it. Anyways, very solid grade 3 to have in the deck for rearguard pressure and just overall pressure and good numbers, but also alternate abilities depending on what card you need from your drop zone. If they ever make more sound system cards, well, there you go. So 3 of Artisaria in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck. And without further ado, that's it for this one. Hope all of you guys enjoyed. Honestly, this deck is very fun to play. When I first saw that it involved locking, I didn't think it was going to be fun to play at all. But then Sound and Shadow got released, and then my playstyle just became spam Shout and Shadows. You know, it was really good for my aggressive playstyles. Basically, Orphis on Lyrical Monasterio, and with more defensive power. But on top of that, this deck has also allowed me to play defensively or play to locking down my opponent's rear guards, because maybe that's what I need to either survive to the next turn because Shout and Shadow's not going to let me live to the next turn, or maybe it's just because I need to play controlling because I know giving my opponent any bit of break outside of the turn that I go for lethal is going to be enough for them to kill me. So I like how this deck can change between offense and defense on a dive. It's not overextending too much in either or. It's a really good balance between them. And as much as I didn't like Suzerain upon her first appearance, I grew to like her as the series went on. And now I kind of hope that whatever the season after DZ is, it kind of does what DZ did for some of the D characters, where it gave more characters time to shine. I kind of hope Suzerain gets that choice, because honestly, I like Artisaria now. So without further ado, I'm going to someone here. Hope all of you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us for this. I'll see you all in the next one. Dorsing up your Vanguards.